provided. You can take the headset near the entrance if needed. Channel 1 is for Cantonese and Channel 2 is for Mandarin. Sign language interpretation is also provided. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the LUI Prize for World Civilization Laureate Public Lecture 2017. I am Connie Tam, MC of today's lecture. We are very pleased today to have Sir Philip Craven, President of the International Paralympic Committee, to be the speaker of today's event. The International Paralympic Committee is the Positive Energy Prize laureate of the LUI World Prize 2017. Let's welcome Sir Philip Craven and give the committee a big round of applause. To begin, may I first invite the Deputy President and Provost of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Professor Philip Chen, to deliver welcoming remarks. Professor Chen, please.
Sir Philip Craven and Mrs. Craven, Dr.呂志和, Dr. Moses Jiang, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, a very warm welcome. PolyU takes pride in co-organizing the呂志和Prize Laureate Public Lecture for the second time. And we are particularly pleased to host this one this year as we celebrate our 80th anniversary this year. It is our honor to have many guests, including the Consul Generals and the secondary school students. Total, you can see in this room, we are about 400 people. Then we have another 100 or so overflowing audience, mostly secondary students in the lecture theater in the basement. First of all, let me extend our congratulations and warmest welcome to our distinguished speaker, Sir Philip Craven, President of the International Paralympic Committee, the IPC. This year, the Positive Energy Prize of the LUI World Prize 2017 is awarded to IPC. In a moment, Sir Philip will share with us on the topic of changing the world through positive experience. Established in 1989, the IPC has been gathering para-athletes from different parts of the world to participate in sport competitions. It organized the Paralympic Games as a symbol of social inclusion once every 4 years, with the vision to enable para-athletes to achieve sporting excellence and inspire and excite the world. Over the years, we have witnessed the progress made by the Paralympic movements in breaking down the social barriers. IPC has certainly done a marvelous job, and its efforts are very admirable. Sir Philip Craven is a passionate sportsman himself, and a 5-time Paralympian in wheelchair basketball and swimming. With his outstanding achievements and contributions to the parasports, he was elected the president of the International Paralympic Committee in 2001 and a member of the International Olympic Committee in 2003. Sir Philip is indeed a role model who demonstrates how para-athletes can empower themselves and inspire others to test personal limits and maximize their abilities. In closing, let me take this opportunity to thank Sir Philip for his vision in building a more inclusive world through positive experience. I'm sure our audience, including myself, will be inspired by your sharing.
Thank you, Professor Chen. Please be seated. Next, may I invite Professor Lawrence J. Lau, Chairman of the Prize Recommendation Committee, LUI Prize, to give an introduction of the prize. Professor Lau, please.
Thank you, Dr. Lui, Professor Chan, Sir Philip, and Lady Craven. I'm most honored today to have the opportunity to provide a brief background for the Louis G. Ward Prize, the Prize for World Civilization. The Louis G. Ward Prize was established by Dr. Louis G. Ward on September 24th, 2015. It is an annual, first of its kind, international and cross-sector award for contribution to world civilization and for inspiring people to build a better and more harmonious world. The Louis Prize is open to the entire world and to people from all walks of life. It is not limited to academics, professionals, and scientists like some other prizes. The Louis Prize is awarded in 3 separate categories each year, and each of the 3 Louis Prizes can be awarded to a single individual or an organization. The first Louis Prize category is the sustainable development of the world, with the prize referred to as the Sustainability Prize. The objective of the Sustainability Prize is to recognize the recipient with outstanding contributions to the maintenance of a sustainable ecological balance in the world and the provision for the needs of the future generations. The second prize category is the betterment of the welfare of mankind, with the prize referred to as the Welfare Betterment Prize. The objective of the Welfare Betterment Prize is to acknowledge the outstanding efforts and achievements of a recipient in enhancing the well-being of the human race. The third prize category is the promotion of positive life attitude and the enhancement of positive energy, with the prize referred to as the Positive Energy Prize. This prize actually is the unique brainchild of Dr. Louis G. Wu here. We've never had a Positive Energy Prize in the world anywhere else. The objective The objective of the Positive Energy Prize is to honor a recipient for the adoption of a positive life attitude and the unwavering determination to make constructive changes in the face of setbacks, hardships, and adversities. Each year, the Prize Council selects a specific area of focus under each prize category. In 2017, for the Positive Energy Prize, the specific area of focus is the promotion of harmony among diverse groups. And the laureate is the International Paralympic Committee, an international non-governmental organization headquartered in Germany. Sir Philip Craven, President of the International Paralympic Committee, is the lecturer for this morning. We will hear from him. We look forward to it. For the Sustainability Prize, the specific area of focus is the prevention of climate change. And the laureate is Mr. Xie Zhenhua. He already gave a lecture a couple of days ago. For the Welfare Betterment Prize, the specific area of focus is the alleviation of poverty, and the laureate is Landesser, a non-governmental organization in the United States. Mr. Tim Hansett, the co-founder and senior advisor of Landesser, will also present a lecture on behalf of Landesser at the University of Hong Kong this afternoon. So if you have time, I urge you also to attend that lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lau. Now may I invite the following guests to join us on stage for a group photo. PolyU Executive Vice President, Dr. Miranda Liu. Vice President, Campus Development and Facility, Mr. Andy Tong. Associate Vice President, Undergraduate Program, Professor Daniel Sheck. Associate Vice President, Learning and Teaching, Professor Chadwin Chen. And a moderator of today's lecture, Professor Cecilia Lee from Department of Rehabilitation Sciences. Distinguished guests of the Lucci Wu Prize. Member of the Board of Governors, Lucci Wu Prize, Dr. Moses Jiang Mo-Ti. Members of Prize Recommendation Committee, Professor Sir Colin Lucas and Professor Hua Xin-Ye. Member of 2017 Selection Panel, Professor Ambrose Yao-Chi King. Chairman of the Prize Selection Committee, Professor Lawrence J. Lau. Fundraising Director, Agitos Foundation, Mr. Andrew Thomas. Executive Director of KY International Holdings, Mr. Alexander Liu Yuhua. Chief Executive Officer of the Lucci Wu Prize Limited, Ms. Vicky Lee. Now may I invite Professor Philip Chan to accompany Dr. Lucci Wu, Founder and Chairman of the Board of Governors Comprised Council of Lucci Wu Prize, as well as Sir Philip Craven and Lady Jocelyn Craven, to come up on stage for the group photo. Thank you all. Would Sir Philip Craven please remain on stage? Other guests, please be seated. Would Sir Craven please come up on stage?
using our model for changing society as a blueprint, I will talk about why I believe a few world leaders can learn from our positive approach and make for a better world for all. But before I begin with the history lesson, I want to give you the stark reality about the exclusion of people with an impairment in today's society. It might surprise you to learn that on this planet Earth, there are more than 1 billion people with an impairment, which equates to 1 in every 7 people. Society has labeled them disabled, a horrible, negative term that focuses on what does not work rather than focusing on the positive of what does work. Should I have to use a collective word, and I try not to on most occasions, I prefer the word impairment. One of the few slogans that I have in my armory is drop the D word. I only use it to highlight the negativity of this word disability when used relative to human beings. It might be okay to use it relative to a machine, saying a machine doesn't function, but not to humans. As long as they have a beating heart and their hearts are connected to their minds, they function. You might think that with the evolution of technology in modern healthcare, that the number of people with an impairment is reducing. But sadly, it's not. It's a figure that's on the rise. An aging population, the rapid spread of chronic diseases, and armed conflict, as we see every day on the news, are just some of the reasons why the world is increasing by the day. A staggering 80% of people with an impairment live in poverty. The majority are many are unable or even unwilling to leave their own homes. Cities are not accessible to their needs, and society is not accepting of them. Even in developed countries, the picture is still very poor, with between 50 and 70% of people with an impairment unemployed because employers wrongly believe they are unable to work or to be productive. In 2016, IPC research in the USA revealed that 1 in 3 Americans would not hire someone with a physical impairment. Who would have thought that in 2017 such negativity and social exclusion still existed? Sadly, it still does, because of a societal myth that if you have a disability, and I'm using the D word there in a negative way, you cannot do something, and therefore you cannot contribute fully to society. Luckily, back in the 1940s, a German neurosurgeon called Sir Ludwig Guttmann had a very different view, a view that helped create the Paralympic movement. During the Second World War, Guttmann opened a spinal injury centre at the Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Great Britain. His aim was to overcome the widely held negative belief, both within the medical profession and among the public, that patients once paralysed faced a pointless future and could never be reintegrated into society. Guttmann's view was that by restoring hope and self-belief in a patient, as well as by providing practical retraining, servicemen and servicewomen could eventually leave the hospital and positively contribute to society once again. He felt that the best way to achieve this was through using sport to assist with the rehabilitation process of the body and of the mind. Initially, he started with war veterans and civilians who'd been injured during wartime, and soon found that his methods were having the desired effect. On the 29th of July, 1948, the day of the opening ceremony of the London Olympic Games, he organized the first sporting event for wheelchair athletes, and he named that the Stoke Mandeville Games. The event involved 16 injured servicemen and women who competed in only one sport, and that was archery. By 1952, it was an international competition with the inclusion of Dutch ex-servicemen. The International Stoke Mandeville Games had been born. As his employment of competitive physical activity became more sophisticated, he saw the benefits of drawing people with similar injuries together. He saw how sport could be an enabler to individuals striving for new goals. In 1960, the first Paralympic Games were held in Rome, Italy, taking place just 6 days after the Olympics in the same city. The event featured 400 athletes with spinal cord injuries from 23 nations who competed in 57 medal events across 8 sports. Accessibility for the athletes was limited, and the Italian military was on standby to assist and, in some cases, carry athletes upstairs to the accommodation. So no real accessibility. 4 years later, the second Paralympic Games were held in Tokyo, involving 375 athletes from 22 countries. As a result of the Tokyo 1964 Games, there was a greater acceptance in Japanese society of people with an impairment, while there was an increase in the provision of special care and rehabilitation. From 1968 until 1984, the Games were held every 4 years, but in different locations to the Olympics. Despite this, the event continued to grow, and other athletes, such as the visually impaired and amputees, started to be included. In 1976, the first Paralympic Winter Games were held in Sweden and have taken place in the same year as the Olympic Winter Games ever since. The Summer Paralympics came back together in the same city as the Olympics in 1988 in Seoul, South Korea. 4 years later, the Barcelona 92 Paralympics were a game changer for the entire Paralympic movement and a catalyst for our future growth. Many of you may remember the iconic moment from the Olympic opening ceremony in Barcelona. I know the younger people here will not remember that, but maybe the older people more in the center of this room might. And you'll remember when an archer shot his flaming arrow 70 meters into the air over the cauldron to light the Olympic flame. Well, Antonio Rebollo, the man who shot the arrow, was actually a para-archer who eventually went on to win Paralympic silver a few weeks later. The Barcelona 92 Games were the first to benefit from daily live domestic TV coverage and big crowds. Tickets for the 16 sports were free, and a record 1.5 million spectators attended. For athletes, this was a new experience. Previously, they were used to competing in front of just a handful of family and friends. They suddenly found themselves in front of huge and vocal crowds. They had to get used to that. Barcelona 92 acted as a trigger to the city to improve its accessibility for visitors, both before and after the Games, making it easier for all people to get around. In 2002, I went back to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Games, and only when leaving did I think to myself how easy it had been to move around the city. Accessibility and mobility is at its best when you don't notice it. You can go about your daily business seamlessly without any issues. Barcelona 92 highlighted the potential for the Paralympic Games, and much of it was realized when Sydney staged the 2000 Games. Sydney 2000 will be remembered for outstanding levels of competition, outstanding levels of organization, and astounding levels of public awareness. A record 1.2 million tickets were sold, and that's the key difference there with Barcelona. People came and bought their tickets, and the Games were shown live on the internet for the first time to more than 100 nations. The Beijing 2008 Games marked the point when the world stood up and properly took notice of the Paralympics. The spaceship, the Paralympic spaceship, took off from the launch pad and started to circle the world. The title of the closing ceremony was A Letter to the Future, and what a letter it was. The Games were sensational and showed they can transcend different cultures. Remarkable sport was complemented with spectacular ceremonies. A record 3,951 athletes from 146 countries took part in 472 medal events spanning 20 sports. TV pictures were beamed to a cumulative TV audience of 3.8 billion people in 80 countries. One of the standout features was their impact on Chinese society. We'd sensed it in Barcelona, in Sydney, and in Athens in 2004. But Beijing was the first Games where we truly recognized the transformational capabilities of the Paralympics. In the 7 years leading up to the opening ceremony, 1 billion RMB, equivalent to the total of the previous 25 years' investment, was spent by the Chinese government, making 14,000 facilities accessible throughout China. New legislation was passed on building accessible facilities using the IPC's own guidelines as a blueprint. Massive levels of investment combined with outstanding performances from para-athletes transformed Chinese society's perceptions of people with an impairment. The Games gave those who had up until then been excluded from society the confidence to leave their homes and be part of their local communities. Beijing 2008 enriched and mobilized the lives of millions of people to such an extent that an official post-Games report said, before the Paralympics, a person with an impairment was a beggar on the street, and I saw many of those before the Games in Beijing. But after the Games, he or she was a long jumper, a wheelchair basketball player, or a footballer. The Beijing Paralympic Games made a huge impression on Lord Sebastian Coe, the president of London 2012. He recognized that the Paralympics still had significant growth potential and took several steps to not just match Beijing 2008, but take the Games into a new dimension. London 2012 attracted a record 4,237 athletes from 164 countries. A record 2.7 million tickets were sold, 95% of capacity, ensuring full venues for athletes competing in all 20 sports. The Games were broadcast in 115 countries, drawing a cumulative TV audience of 3.8 billion. They were the first digital Games. And on Twitter, hashtag Paralympics was the year's biggest trending sport event, knocking hashtag Premier League and hashtag Olympics into second and third places respectively. In Great Britain, the Games were shown on Channel 4, the broadcaster whose Rio 2016 video you saw at the start. They invested in their biggest ever marketing campaign ahead of the Games and worked closely with the IPC in London 2012 to help reposition Paralympic sport in the public's eye as high-performance sport. They created a stunning campaign around a group of leading British para-athletes who they labelled superhumans. Set to a pounding soundtrack, the advert presented the backstories of how Paralympians came to be and showcased the intensive training regimes they undertake to become high-performance athletes. The advert arguably did more to change people's views on Paralympic sport in 60 seconds than the previous 10 years of marketing activity combined. The result was record-breaking audiences. Most days, Channel 4 enjoyed the biggest audience share of all the main UK channels, and overall their 150 hours of coverage reached 39.9 million viewers, over 69% of the UK population. The opening ceremony was watched by more than 11.2 million people, the channel's biggest audience for a decade. In addition, stories from the Games made the front and back pages of all national newspapers, and the widespread coverage led to seismic shifts in attitudes and perceptions. 1 in 3 British adults, equivalent to 20 million people, said they changed their views of people with an impairment as a result of the London 2012 Paralympic Games. The Games were a perfect storm, with all the planets aligning at the right time. Not only did they deliver the widespread media and broadcast coverage the Paralympics had always craved and deserved, but we were helped by every single major Games sponsor activating their rights. everyone bought into our desire to reposition Paralympic sport as high-performance sport. As with previous games, athletic performance stepped up yet another gear, and by the time Coldplay and Rihanna performed at the closing ceremony, London 2012 had created a blueprint for all future Paralympic Games. For all the smooth running of London 2012, Rio 2016 was a very different proposition. Brazil was subject to the most difficult economic and political situation in the run-up to the Games, and this had a huge impact on the overall organization. Despite the unprecedented challenges we faced, we overcame them to produce an amazing Paralympic Games, considering the circumstances. It's in the Paralympic DNA to see challenges and barriers as opportunities to do things differently. And that's what we did to ensure Latin America's first Paralympics were highly successful. The Carioca, the people of Rio de Janeiro, the sports fans were unbelievable. 2.15 million tickets were sold, and they turned out, and I've never heard a noise quite like it at the Paralympics before. It was a little bit like a FIFA World Cup final combined with a Rio Carnival crowd. It was amazing. And though the passion that these people put forward, fused with astonishing athletic performances, produced the People's Games. Really it was the People's Games. We mobilized different generations of families to attend the Games, and on the first Saturday of the Games, we had 170,000 fans in the park in Baja, more than at any point during the Olympic Games. Arguably, Rio 2016 did more for the Paralympic movement than London 2012, and showed to the world that no matter where the Paralympics are held, they can be successful. Everyone expected Beijing 2008 and London 2012 to be great, but few expected Rio to deliver what it did. Of the 159 competing countries, 83, the most ever, won at least one medal, showing the growing strength of parasport around the world. The first independent Paralympic athletes team also took part, featuring 2 refugee athletes. The Games were broadcast in 154 countries, a record cumulative TV audience of 4.1 billion people. A further 1.3 billion people were reached on social media, and the IPC website received more visitors during the year than the last 3 years combined. The Games were the best ever in terms of athletic performance, and I would like to give you a few examples just to highlight how far we have come. The top 4 finishers, now you'll have to start to believe what I'm telling you here, and then reflect that, have you heard what I've said? The 4 top finishers in the men's 1,500 meters visually impaired race all finished in times quicker than the Rio 2016 men's Olympic champion over the same distance. Iranian powerlifter Siaman Rahman became the first Paralympian to bench press 300 kilograms. Eventually lifting 310 kilograms, and it's been written down here, that's the equivalent weight of a large Siberian tiger. Now, I don't want to get close enough to try and lift a large Siberian tiger, but that's what our Director of Communications has put down here for you to give a comparison. Cuba's visually impaired sprinter Omara Durand won her 100-meter gold in 11.4 seconds, a full 1 second quicker than the Sydney 2000 champion in the same race. For those of you who missed Rio 2016, here is some of the best of the action.
Bem-vindos ao Rio, a cidade maravilhosa.
Vamos lá, chegou a hora. Nossa história é aqui e agora. Vamos transformar cada segundo no melhor de nós pra todo mundo. Vamos lá, nossa mensagem, soltar nossa voz, força e coragem. Vamos transformar
could not have finished it better.
To thank Rio de Janeiro, Cariocas Fantásticos. You warmly embraced these games and took the athletes to your hearts.
So that's the end of the history lesson, really, and now I just want to talk more about the philosophy a little bit behind positive energy, etc. Although the first Paralympics were held in 1960, it wasn't until 1989 that the IPC was established. When I took over as president in 2001, the organization was still in its infancy, employing just 10 full-time employees at our headquarters in Bonn, in Germany. But over the last 16 years, through the passion of its people, the IPC has been transformed from a disability sport organization into a widely respected and credible international sports organization. Today, IPC employs 100 people from 28 different nations, and we aspire to make for a more inclusive society for people with an impairment through parasport. One of my first jobs as president in early 2002, was to define the IPC's vision. We then had to put it into action, be true to it at all times, and regularly reassess it. The IPC's athlete-focused vision is to enable para-athletes to achieve sporting excellence and inspire and excite the world. Probably the most important word in that vision is enable, as it means that we don't do it for the athletes do it for themselves. They empower themselves to get active, take up parasport, and live healthier and fuller lives. The IPC and its over 200 members, for their part, provide multiple stages upon which para-athletes can perform. So they're doing the performing, they're doing the training, but we're providing the venues and the competitions so that they can show the world what they're capable of. Achieving sporting excellence, well, you may say that that's pretty obvious, but it's not just about winning a world title or topping the podium at the Paralympic Games. Excellence must be partnered to each individual, and what is deemed as achieving excellence is different for each person. For some, achieving excellence may just be trying sport in the first place, whilst for others it may be participating on a regular basis or competing at a world championships. What is important, however, is that we provide a platform for people to do their best without the fear of failure, no matter what their level of competence. Inspire. Well, Inspire is about the IPC's 4 athlete-centered values of courage, determination, inspiration, and equality, and really equality of opportunity, which act as the underlying reference for all those involved in parasport. When you see a para-athlete in action, you quickly realize that anything is achievable in life, and that's every one of you. When you see a swimmer with no arms, somehow firstly remove his tracksuit top and then do the 50-meter freestyle in less than 30 seconds, you cannot help but be inspired. And that particular swimmer is a Chinese swimmer. Although excite is the emotion you feel when you watch parasport, I think that at first you're surprised. Wow, did I really just see that experience? You can't believe it to begin with. And then you say, well, this is great sport. Let's watch some more. Oh, no, it's been written down for me here. I just ad-libbed then. When you watch parasport, you see high-performance sport featuring amazing feats of endurance that will surprise you, tremendous skills that will excite you, and examples of human endeavor that will inspire you. It is sport that really does change perceptions. But why, you may ask? Why does it change these perceptions? Well, the answer is the Paralympic spirit. On the night of the award of the 3 prizes, the Loi Chi Wu prizes, was it 3 nights ago? I think it was. It seemed a long time ago, but it was 3 nights ago. That word spirit was used on many, many different occasions. But the Paralympic spirit is not easily defined. It's in the air. But it's something that provides the fundamental building blocks which we construct, and to help us construct the type of organization of which we wish to be part. The Paralympic spirit, as I've said before, is in the air at each of our events and is created by the passion of the people, whether that be athletes, coaches, volunteers, officials, or members of staff. It has provided the positive energy behind the success of Beijing, London, and the Rio Paralympics, and is the driving force behind the daily work of the Paralympic movement. What the Paralympic spirit does is to take the negativity of disability, which focuses on what does not work, and shifts it 180 degrees to the positivity of athletic performance, which showcases what does work. By doing so, it transforms attitudes towards impairment and destroys society's long-held myth that having an impairment means you can't do something. Donna Ritchie, the captain of the Australian wheelchair basketball team in 2000, summed it up best. She said, Paralympians don't have the time to worry about what doesn't work, they just maximize what does. Very simple words, but it gets it right on the button. The Paralympic spirit also means that Paralympians and those who work in the movement are hugely positive and optimistic people. We see a glass as at least half full rather than half empty. The Paralympic spirit runs throughout everything the IPC does and ensures that the same principles we had when we were founded in 1989 are the same principles that we adhere to today. We aim to ensure that Paralympic sport showcases the true meaning of sport, that teaches key life skills, and sport that does not welcome dopers or cheats. In our view, fair sport is vitally important as it can make for a better and more law-abiding society. Sport improves self-discipline, respect and tolerance. Sport leads to a greater understanding of why in life and in society you must play by the rules. Where else can you pit 2 fierce rivals head-to-head in peaceful conflict other than in sport? And I can assure you, when I was playing wheelchair basketball, I wasn't all that peaceful on court. I was a little bit rough and ready, and occasionally I got sent off for 5 fouls. But I always tried to maybe stretch the rules, but of course the referees made sure that I never broke them, and if I did, I was in trouble. So, but that's what I remember. I was a little bit of a renegade and a rebel when I was younger. I still am, but I can cover it up better now. Many organizations these days claim to be transparent in order to show people that they have nothing to hide. And really, transparency is the buzzword. Well, the IPC is not only transparent, but it's open. We positively go out to people to show what we do and what we stand for. We're proud of our beliefs and our commitment to mobilizing society through positivity. The world desperately needs positive energy and positive change. When you change societal thinking through positive experiences, like the Paralympic movement does, you can more easily influence changes in other areas of life. With this thought still fresh in your mind, I want to finish today by sharing my concerns about the current state of this planet and how I feel it has a very negative condition at the moment. In my 16 years as IPC president, I've traveled all over the world, meeting many world leaders and people from different nations and regions. I had an amazing meeting with Wen Jiabao in November 2005, and I can tell you the Paralympics weren't moving forward prior to 2008 too quickly. And I learned later that the meeting should have lasted 15 or 20 minutes in the Fujian Hall on Tiananmen Square, and it lasted 40 minutes. And all we talked about was what sport and parasport can do for society. And in February 2006, Hu Jintao declared, I'm getting emotional, Games of Equal Splendor, and the Paralympics, boom, went like that. It was amazing. And I've also had lunch and sat next to the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, on many occasions during the Games in Sochi. Quite an experience, which maybe I'll recount in my memoirs a little bit later when I get to have the time to write them. But really, I've met many, many different people, and they've come from all sorts of social status and all backgrounds. But everybody, I believe, wants a better life. A life where they could make the most of what they have and make the most of what they could become. It's a human instinct to be positive and to want to make progress in life. We naturally move forwards rather than backwards. Now, to make progress in life, you need strong leadership, a strong vision, and excitement for what lies ahead. You need positive energy. Yet if you look at the news today, it's full of doom and gloom. Negativity is having a far greater influence over the world's population than positivity. This, in my view, is a huge problem, as negativity divides people, creates tensions, and leads to exclusion. Ultimately, it restricts progress and makes people worried for their futures. This negativity stems from insecure world leaders and bullies who use negativity to exploit fear. They share alternative facts and use the fear and uncertainty they create to turn people against each other. Have you ever heard of a phrase like alternative facts? You know, that's really, it's ridiculous. It's really, they're really saying, no, it's lies really, but you know, we're going to call them alternative facts. Do they think the people around the world are stupid? Huh? No, we're not stupid, and we're not going to stand for it. Anyway, that's a personal view. That's not the official view of the IPC, by the way, necessarily. But last week, I saw a speech by former US President Bill Clinton, and he has similar concerns. President Clinton highlighted that everyone in this world is 99.5% the same genetically, and that it is just 0.5% of our genes that makes us different one from the other. He accused world leaders of spreading tribalism. Instead of taking the positive approach and looking at the 99.5% we all have in common, leaders are taking a negative route and focusing on the 0.5% that makes us all different. Taking such a route, he says, encourages resentment and eventually conflict. In his view, democracy requires diversity and debate, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. People need to understand that we're all members of one world. We have no other planet to go to. We're not going to Mars and Venus. We're staying on planet Earth. And it's a real tragedy. We've only got between 1 and 2 billion years left before this planet starts to turn into, is it a red dwarf? But let's make the most of it. Now, don't get me wrong, not everything on planet Earth is perfect right now. And it's up to particularly all you young people here to get things to be better in the future. But if we try to make these changes through negative actions, then I fear we will make some regrettable choices, choices that could threaten all our futures and those of future generations. So how do we get rid of the negativity that is slowly strangling this planet? Well, in my view, we need to replace the insecure leaders, in a peaceful manner, by the way. I'm not advocating armed revolution or anything like that. Replace the insecure leaders who use negativity to divide and replace them with strong leaders who use passion and positivity to unite. We then need leaders to look at what we have achieved within the Paralympic movement as a blueprint to see how they can mobilize society through positivity. We have helped to transform negative attitudes through positive experiences, and I'm certain that world leaders can do the same. The transformational powers of positive energy are infinite, especially when in the possession of an inspired and visionary leader. Positivity unites people. It leads to society achieving common goals, and it drives inclusion. Positivity encourages cooperation. By working together to fix something, we can show the good of society rather than the bad. It's time to stop dividing people. Let's bring people together, and let's choose hope over fear. People work better with a common goal, people work better in a positive environment, and people are much happier with a positive outlook on life. One world, one dream, one people. It's so simple. Thank you very much. And here we have a final video.
One world, one dream, one people.
Why should it be that people should be held down just because of a wrong perception? And so remove that wrong perception, illuminate the world with the fact that everybody has a chance to be given the opportunity and then to strive for whatever equality they perceive. And so our vision is to enable para-athletes to achieve sporting excellence and inspire and excite the world. Probably the most important word is enable, because that means that we don't do it for the athletes. They do it for themselves. And normally before we inspire and excite, we surprise the world. Say, wow, I didn't know that was possible. That's been happening here. Then you have a chance to make the world a better place.
Founded as a non-profit organization, the International Paralympic Committee aims to develop sports opportunities for all people with an impairment from the beginner to elite level.
People were afraid of touching athletes with one leg or one arm.
What Paralympic sport is phenomenal at showing people, it's just what's achievable. But what it shows, it doesn't matter what life deals you, you can always make something great out of it.
Paralympic Games can transcend different cultures. When we look at Beijing, an official government publication after the Games said now the Chinese people would see of a person with an impairment as a football player, a basketball player or a track athlete.
And just by seeing the performances of the athletes, that will act as a catalyst to people changing their perceptions of what a person with an impairment can do, change your mindset. And you're thinking, if they can do that, then so can I. No is not an option here. I remember looking across to the VIP area, and there were multiple world leaders and members of royalty from around the world, and everyone had their mobile phone out. They wanted to capture what was a very special moment for the Paralympic movement.
But the first reaction of anyone when it comes across Paralympic sport is, wow, these guys are athletes, elite perform athletes. Being in a wheelchair or being an amputee or a cerebral palsy or blind, visually impaired, that does not define the person. Through the disability should not be a barrier. I think the Paralympic sport helps in that, because the disability is on our face, we can see them, but it's much more important what the person can do compared to what the person cannot do.
Parasports changed my life. Parasports gave me the possibilities to show the people what we are able to do. I think the biggest advance the parasport has is the family in the background. The parasport movement is not only based on the IPCs, based on the athletes, and we growing together.
The Paralympic movement is about challenging community, challenging society of what they expect of people with disabilities. And we get to go into their lounge rooms and into their families and challenge everything that they had previously believed. And that's where the power of our movement is.
It's been amazing for me to see the Paralympics grow. When I picked up the Paralympic sports, I barely could find anything in media. It was really hard to follow the athletes, follow the results. And at this point, I feel like we get recognition like never before, and I feel like they finally see us as proper athletes. And with that, the athletes are growing, we're getting stronger fields, we're getting better world records.
The relationship between IPC and the athlete is really important because we're the voices for them, and then there are voices for us. And so we want it to be on TV everywhere, we want it to be on the news everywhere, and we want it to be on the social media. And we both have that common goal.
And I remember walking into the stadium and seeing a Chinese high jumper who jumped with one leg. And I remember distinctly in that moment, my eyes becoming very wet, and it was tears of joy.
Diversity is a reality, inclusion is a choice. Diversity is a strength, and that's what it makes us a global organization.
The Agitos Foundation was established in 2012 and is the charitable arm of the IPC. Its motto is developing parasport and changing lives. The programme that we are especially proud of is our education programme called I'm Possible, which is aimed at children between 6 to 12. It's the idea of getting to children before society has influenced them tremendously, so that they can act as catalysts amongst their parents, amongst their families, and really change societal attitudes.
Well, it's really, I would say it's really a family, that we all share the same passion for the movement. We all see that there is so much to further develop, to create even more opportunities for people with impairments.
When I joined the movement, I found my place in this world. I said, well, this is what I would like to do for life, because of course I'm passionate about sport, but I'm even more passionate about sport changing lives, sport changing the world. So this is what made me stay in this movement for 20 years, and I want to stay for 20 years more.
We're all members of one world, one dream, one people. We're all part of the same world.
That's it.
Thank you so much for the inspiring lecture. Sir Philip, please remain on stage. May I now invite Professor Cecilia Lee to come up on stage to lead the Q&A section. Professor Lee, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very, very inspiring, and I'm very touched. This is open to open discussion and question time, but I have already talked to Sir Philip that in Hong Kong, most of the audience remain quiet in the beginning. So I'm the first one to break the ice. So my first question is, you mentioned about 4 words: courage, determination, inspiration, and equality. Very impressive 4 words. And then how would you motivate all these para-athletes to get involved into the sports using these 4 words as your motto or your values?
Well, that's a good question, because when I started playing wheelchair basketball, it wasn't 4 words that got me started. It was just the fact that there was a ball, and I was in a wheelchair, and I couldn't even touch the ring, which is 10 feet above the ground, as you may know, with the ball. It wasn't because I didn't have the power. I didn't have the balance in my trunk because I was paralyzed from here, and I had to learn how to do all that. So, yes, to those are 4 words that have come out of athletic performance within the movement, and they're a consequence of athletic performance. And so, the key thing in sport, when you're starting something, is to have fun. Yes. It's not to say, oh, in 2 years' time I will win a gold medal. It's to enjoy yourself. And you must find the sport that you enjoy, not the sport that somebody says, oh, you're 6'6", so you must play basketball. But you might prefer to swim. So why can't you swim? So it's important to try several sports. But it's the sport that's the attraction, and then it's the sport if you have suffered maybe a serious accident or an illness, or you're born with an impairment, which acts as a vehicle that you can attach yourself to, that can give you self-confidence, and then you can move forward to do other things in life, if you don't wish to be, or you don't have the talent to be, a top-flight athlete.
Right, thank you. And I must say that I'm not really good at sports. And this is something that I lack, the 4 words. I'm not having the courage to move on, only doing some minor sports stuff. And I think these are very important, especially for those who have some kind of impairment. As a rehab personnel, it's very, very difficult for us to persuade them to move on and to build up what they can do, rather than focusing on what they cannot do.
Yeah. But you told me earlier today, you told me that in 2 years' time, you're going to retire. Yes. And therefore, I think that we can convince Celia to take up sport, minimally in 2 years' time, if not next week. And therefore, that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. This is also my husband's intentions. He always asks me to do sports, and it's very important and it's good for our health. Yeah. Okay, I think it's time for us to move the discussion to the floor. And may I have raise of hands for those who are interested to raise a question for Sir Philip? Yes, ladies in this row.
Microphone.
Thank you so much for that inspiring talk and the amazing videos as well. My question actually is about pay. And there's been a lot of debate, particularly in the world of tennis and the Olympics, about equal pay for women players. And fortunately, that debate has actually created parity in a lot of sports for women and men, which is a great thing. But you don't hear so much about equal pay for para-athletes. And pay is obviously a signifier of equality. So do you think that that debate needs to be discussed more, and how far are we along that line?
Thank you for your question. I think that from the point of view of para-sport, some sports attract payment for athletes. Many sports still do not. And therefore, I'm not sure we can have a debate about it and about the ethics surrounding the fact that I absolutely support that women should receive equal payment to men. There's no doubt about that, and I'm sure that the IPC would absolutely support that. But for me, being paid to compete in something that you love doing isn't the first priority. But it is important when you now have to sacrifice, I won't say all of your week to training, because I believe that you can train and also work at the same time still. Many professional athletes will tell you can't, but there's about 16 hours in the day when you're awake, normally, maybe 15, and therefore you can't train for 15 hours, and you can't play for 15 hours, so you've got other time to do other things. And therefore, for me, the first attraction of sport is not that you're going to be paid for doing something. And I think that the great danger when athletes purely see what they do as their job is that they lose passion for what they're doing, and they only wait until the next paycheck comes along. So I'm not answering your question in the sense that we're not in that situation yet, where we're saying women athletes are not being paid the same as men. We've not reached that situation. I know in wheelchair basketball, money is paid to players in the biggest of the national leagues, whether that's in the USA, whether that's in Australia, Italy, Spain, not in Great Britain for some strange reason, because all the top British players go and play on the continent or go and play abroad. So we're not at that stage yet, but absolutely. Women, and this is something I've not mentioned, I'm looking at a lot of women here today. The world needs far more women involved so that the world can be a better place. Women get what is right for the world. They're about maintaining the family far more than men that tend to pick a fight far more easily than thinking about the consequences. So it is very important. It may become a question in the future, and it's something that we would fully support, that it's equality, one of our values, with regard to pay.
I've got one more question, if I may. It's about technology. So with para-athletes, obviously you have a lot more technology involved. You have blades, wheelchairs, etc. So how do you ensure fairness? Is there some kind of check? How do you make sure that people are competing on the basis of them as an athlete, as opposed to the technology within the blade or the wheelchair or whatever they're using?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it is the human body that drives the technology, and you will appreciate that if you are a single or a double leg, for example, amputee, then you do need the support that these blades can give. The technology behind blades has not changed in the last 10 years. So it's not that there's extra spring, which gives an amazing advantage, and therefore we have para-athletes having feats that are even more so than their Olympic counterparts. But therefore we have a strict principle that it's not, the technology must not improve performance beyond the fact that the body can perform using this technology. When I first came into wheelchair basketball, there was this very strange rule regarding the wheelchairs. That now there are rules which do limit the diameter of the wheels, for example. All the foot plates have to be at the same height, or else you'll be breaking somebody's ankles if you crash into them, etc. So there are all sorts of controls there. There's a maximum seat height, so you've not got some players up here way above others. And no, but it may seem logical. But when I first started, we used the US rules of the game, and they thought that they were making things equal for everybody by having just one wheelchair size, just one wheelchair width. But what happens if you're 6'4" or 5'3"? That won't work for you. So that was the wrong logic altogether, and the players demanded change, and change came. And therefore you can have a wheelchair that fits your requirements, but you can't have one that goes beyond the height and the different regulations that are there. But we're absolutely determined. For example, in field events, and I'm not a field eventer, so if anybody is, and they know about parasport, they'll know a lot more than I do. But a thrower, particularly somebody doing the shot put, has got the right to hold on to a pole, let's say. But if that pole is incredibly elastic, and it can have a major influence on your ability to put the shot. And therefore there are limitations on how much flexibility that pole can have. And so there are a lot of rules in each of the sports to ensure that there are not advantages that go beyond what should be.
Okay, next question. Yes.
Well, can I just echo, I think, on the technology part. Recently, the IPC had a sports science or sport medicine conference in Toronto, the Vista Conference. I think one of the lecture or one of the platform or discussion platform is on the ethics of about the technology. But I totally agree with you, Philip, that I think it's the body that dictate the technology, not the technology that dictate the body. And having said that, I also take this opportunity to thank Polytechnics. I think they are doing a lot of work, I think, for the local Paralympian in terms of sports science and sport medicine and technology as well, especially on the cushion, the use of the proper cushion. So I just take this opportunity to thank Polytechnics as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next question, please. That side first. Yes, question here. And then followed by here.
Just a question to clarify. I think it was a very interesting lecture. So we deaf people, we don't have a physical impairment, right? So if a deaf person has a broken finger, and if the deaf person is interested in running, should they go to a Deaf Olympics or should they go to a Paralympics? Yeah, because we have two choices as deaf people, so just a question for you.
I've got a very simple answer to that. That's for the individual to decide. If they, for example, you said if they'd lost a finger, I think it would take more than losing a finger to qualify for the Paralympics. But let's say if they'd lost a leg and they're also deaf, then again, it would be down to the individual. But I think that if they competed in Deaf Olympics, they'd be at a significant disadvantage if they were competing against a deaf person with two good legs, for example. So up to the individual, but they would qualify if they were an amputee and were deaf to compete in the Paralympics.
Thank you. Question here? Yes.
Thank you for sharing. It was very eye-opening. So I'd like to ask two questions. First of all, apart from the athlete's physique, what do you think is the major difference between the Olympics and the Paralympics? And secondly, I'd also like to ask, how do you think can the Paralympics promote human rights? Thank you.
Just one moment. Thank you very much for both those questions.
So the first question is the differentiation between Olympics and Paralympics.
I would really, I could search my mind and look for the differences between the two games. I really would sooner talk about the great similarities, and I think the overriding similarity is that of sport and that of competition. We have, and this morning I chose not to talk about our partnership with the IOC because I thought I was talking more about the philosophy. But we have an excellent partnership with the International Olympic Committee. We've had a cooperative agreement which has moved to a partnership since the year 2000 in Sydney when the first document was signed. And really what we're looking to do is to create an incredible festival of sport over, for example, in the Summer Games, over a 4 to 4.5 month period from when the Olympic torch arrives in the country through to the Olympic Games, which we view as an excellent major practice event or warm-up event for the Paralympics. People say to me, well, wouldn't it be better if the Paralympics were before the Olympics? I can absolutely assure you that that would not be the case, and especially when we looked to Rio last year. But the similarities are sport, the similarities are athletes, the similarities are officials. Now, when I first became president in 2001, we didn't have one sponsor, one partner, not one. And I could give you some of the reasons for that, but I won't do today, but they're of my opinion. But we had to realize where we were, what we had to offer, before we could go asking companies for them to support us. And the key thing now that I've found, and maybe this is a difference, is that major companies such as Toyota, such as Allianz, such as BP, they want the Paralympic spirit. They want, as BP adverts, I was going to show a BP advert today, but they have a series of adverts called The Energy Within. And it's about the energy within the human being. And I've been an IOC member, now I'm ceasing to be president of the IPC, and Andrew Parsons, who was on that film, is the new president going forward, and I cease to be the president, what date is it today? In 10 days' time, actually. What was I going to tell you on that about? I've lost my train of thought now. I'm thinking now about retirement. That it may be that, as we've already spoken about, payment of athletes, payment of women athletes, there's less money in the Paralympic movement. And when there's an intense amount of money in sport, maybe the values take a second seat. You know, they're behind what really sport is all about. And what I would say is that if major companies are coming to us now and seeking out the human spirit, let's call it that, it's the Paralympic spirit, let's call it the human spirit, then that is something that they don't have at the moment, that they want in their company, and it's something that maybe we have, maybe a little bit more of than the Olympics at the moment. Maybe not, that's for you to decide, but that may be a difference. Coming to the second point, second question, about human rights. Well, we believe that, that by opening up society to individuals who are perceived to have an impairment, my legs don't work. I use a wheelchair, but I'm not disabled, I'm me. And every one of you, I can see so many of you wearing glasses here. Is that an impairment? I've no hair. Is that an impairment? I don't think so. But everybody's an individual. Everybody's similar and different. 99.5% according to Bill Clinton of us are exactly the same, and then we've got that 0.5% that's different. Isn't it wonderful? So if we are promoting individuals to have a fuller life, then aren't we, just by that very fact, promoting the rights of that individual to lead a full life and not feel as if they're being held back by anything? So I think it's an automatic fact that if you give more opportunities to people, whether it's through sport and then through other things, employment, getting married, having kids, whatever you want to do, then I think you're supporting the human rights or the rights of individuals to a fuller life.
Very good. Just want to supplement one more thing about human rights. After the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, you can see that persons with wheelchair is more accessible.
Well,
at
you're
least
saying
in
the
Paralympics
or the Olympics?
Paralympics,
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
Paralympics.
okay.
Yes, question here.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, positive energy is very important, particularly nowadays in the world. And seeing how these people can perform such high excellency really can give positive energy to all people, in particular the youth in Hong Kong. So what is the best strategies in using these means in encouraging the youth people?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think by that you're meaning, how do we get through to the far wider population?
Yeah, and how to enable the youth to capture the positive energy from the disabled athletes?
Yeah. Well, I think that what we've realized, and as Andrew Thomas was in the film there talking about the Agitos Foundation, that really education is so fundamental to the future of the world, actually, and I think all parents would recognize that. And one of the programs that we have through the foundation, the Agitos Foundation, is I'm Possible. And this is a program that goes into schools, into primary and junior schools. And this educates young people into the fact that we're all different and we're all similar. And it's had a great, great effect in its very short life, this program of I'm Possible. It's been adopted already by the Japanese government to be in all, I'll call them primary and junior schools. I only remember when I was at school. I'm not sure what they're called now. And, but already this is being adopted nationally by the Japanese government. It's already been adopted by Armenia, and it's already been translated into many, many other languages. What I will say is that just prior to the Games in Athens in 2004, I came up with a philosophy which I called reverse education. Normally, I think parents and grandparents think that they pass down all their wonderful knowledge to their children and their grandchildren, and whereas I believe that it's the young people, when they become aware of such capabilities, they need to become aware of these capabilities, and that's why we have programs such as I'm Possible. They educate their parents, and they educate their grandparents. And we know that this happens because if children go to the games, say on the first few days of the games in Athens, in Beijing, in London, then they'll get their parents to come back with them and say, we want to bring you back to those games. We want to see some more. And it's the parents that learn even more than the kids. And therefore, there are processes in play, and they really work. But we're being proactive through programs such as I'm Possible. And I recommend to the Hong Kong government that they should adopt this program similarly.
Thank you. I think we should do that.
Okay.
One last question. Yes. Here.
First of all, thank you so much. It's been such an inspiring video and your talk. One last question is that how do you see the growth of the international Paralympic, sports in the next 10 years? Will it be more inclusion of sports program? And lastly is a personal question for you. Which is your most favorite basketball team and the player? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The next 10 years, well, I'm not going to be president, so that's really down to the new president. But what we've done, we've really brought the Paralympic Games once every 2 years, when we include the Winter Games, I think more to the forefront, into people's minds, particularly through television and social media, and of course for the spectators who attend the games. But what we've been doing also over the last, I would say, 10 years, is infilling the time between the games with far higher standard world championships and regional championships, so that parasport is far more regularly in the public eye, and it's not just once every 2 years. And that's something that we intend to accelerate with, really, and it's very, very important. And now we have some of our partners sponsoring particular world championships, ensuring that there's television coverage of those world championships, etc., etc. But if I look to maybe my next 10 years, and I'm not being allowed to leave the Paralympic movement completely, even though I really now want to have some time to do what I really enjoy doing, which I won't go into here, but really, it's the work of the foundation that really inspires me. The Agitos Foundation. What we have to do, we've got maybe 25, 35, 40 national Paralympic committees who really are off and running now. They have, I mean, for example, the Brazilian Paralympic Committee has more staff than the IPC. They have 110 staff, I think, and we have 100. So, you know, they're up and running and they're away. But there's another 150, 160 nations in the world where we have to give support so that they become stronger as organizations. And we, the Paralympic movement and the IPC, we're only as strong as our members. It's our members that make us strong. It's not our office in Bonn, in Germany. And so it's in our interest to encourage better organizational structures of our national Paralympic committees, strengthening our athlete classification processes, ensuring that we support clean sport and get rid of doping in sport if we possibly can. And we're trying very, very hard to do that, as you may be aware, through different initiatives that have taken place. And so there's much, much work to do. And it'll never be ending, the work. But really, the work of the foundation is fundamental to the future strength of our organization. Which is my favorite basketball team. Well, the thing is, I'm a wheelchair basketball player. And so you probably know more about NBA teams than I do. But my best friend in the States lives in Boston. And therefore, I've got to say that he would not be very happy with me if I said the Lakers. So it's got to be the Boston Celtics. And I've been to see them play. And one of the first pieces of publicity for wheelchair basketball in the USA was in 46 or 47, when the local wheelchair team took on the Boston Celtics, sat in wheelchairs and absolutely smashed them, you know. So that was in the press, and of course they had no idea how to control the wheelchairs, so they hardly ever got out of their half. But really, it's wheelchair basketball that I know better, and it's just a wonderful sport. After cricket, it's the best sport in the world. But as being a British guy, cricket is the #1 sport for me, and the next big event is playing Australia in the Ashes series, and my God, that's going to be a battle royal, and let's hope we beat the Aussies in Australia.
Thank you very much for the inspiring speech. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir Philip, please stay on stage.
Yeah, can I just say another word before you come in? And I'd really just like to pay compliment to the staff and volunteers of the Lloyd Chiwu Prize, and also, of course, the family. But really, positive energy, I think if you're looking for a positive energy source, then, or if I may say, a relentless energy source, then you should look to Vicky Lee and her team, because it's been absolutely fantastic being with you this week. And really, you're a great group of superhuman beings. Thank you very much.
To show our sincere appreciation to Sir Philip for being with us today, we have a special souvenir for him. May I invite Professor Philip Chan to present a souvenir to Sir Philip Craven. Professor Chan, please. Both, please be seated. So let us now take a group photo of our speaker with all who joined our lecture today.